For wrestling diehards only, this is the Idaho Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Mat Chat Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, coming at you live on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Twitter account, wherever you're at tonight. Thanks for being with us. My name is Brandon Baney. I'm merely the driver here. The important people are sitting in the back seat. It's like a limousine. We've got Al Fontes joining us tonight, along with Jacob Eck. Jacob, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm ready for the holiday season. I'm ready for a little break in the action personally, but you know,
I feel that.
no doubt. Al, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Same as you. I'm tired. Had a long weekend, but I'm ready for a little break.
Definitely. And, just a quick programming note. I think next week we had talked about maybe taking the week off just because it's, the week between Christmas and New Year's. There's not a ton going on. And then we'll come back in 2023 better than ever and ready to talk about, Raleigh Lane will be coming up, pretty quickly after that. And so it'll be a great time. But thanks to everybody that's tuning in tonight, whether you're watching on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube. If you can't be live tonight, you can always go back and watch the replay later. You can get the audio version of this podcast at IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, there's a little tab that says Prepcasts. From there, there's a drop-down menu. You just click on the Mat Chat Prepcast. You can listen to it there. You can listen to it wherever you download your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc. So a lot of different ways to consume the content. Everybody that's watching tonight, go ahead and hit that like button. While you're just hanging out, it takes 2 seconds. If you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. It's that little bell icon, and that'll let you know every time we're going live with a new show, because sometimes we have to change up the night we're doing it, right? We usually do these on Tuesday nights. Well, I had to broadcast a basketball game last night. By the way, it was a really good one. Shelley beat Skyline in overtime, 70-68 in girls hoops. So I had a game last night, so we had to do it Wednesday night. And while you're hitting the like button and checking it out, feel free to leave a comment as well. We will put your comments up on the screen. We'll answer your questions. If you want to give your favorite team or athlete a shout out, go ahead and do it. We've already got our first comment of the night from Alfonso. We don't take a break. You shouldn't either. What do you think, Jacob?
I know Fonzie really well, so I know he's at home taking a break right now, so he's just pulling our leg.
Yeah. For sure. You gotta have that balance, right? Because you get to a certain point, and if the energy and the mindset isn't right, then you're almost doing negative damage, right? Instead of positive gains. We always start the show with the best thing that we saw from the last week. Al, I'll start with you. What was the best thing you saw last week in the sport of wrestling?
Best thing I saw last week was just some of the great wrestling at the Reno TOC. A lot of kids that were beating ranked wrestlers, coming from behind and winning close matches. Nothing in particular, but just good wrestling overall.
Jacob, what was the best thing you saw last week?
Well, it just happened probably about an hour ago. South and Minico just wrestled. Minico beat him 39-36, which, like, looking at the box score, and that's the only way I saw it so far, it looked like it was one of the best duels probably of the year so far.
Yeah, I was a little worried that, we usually have a pretty strong South Fremont contingent that likes to tune into the show, and I knew by pushing it to Wednesday, we might miss out on our Cougars because they had that duel with Minico tonight. And I was really intrigued by that. Of course, there's the next big duel coming up right before Raleigh Lane with South Fremont as well. But just looking at the initial box score, Jacob, what can you glean from that? It's hard to without knowing, who did what, right?
I mean, there was good matches all over. I mean, 13, Banner wrestled up. I don't know what weight he's going, 13 or 6. It's up in the air, but I mean, Valero versus Banner, that's a great match. And then you go up to 20, Packer versus Stimson, both state placers, both very good kids. They wrestled 3-1, all the way up. you had good matches and ending 39-36. Can't get much better than that for a duel on a Wednesday.
Yeah, and right before the holiday break as well, for sure. Especially with Christmas right around the corner, it can be hard mentally sometimes to focus in with one last competition for sure. Alfonso says, me and the boys watching. Thank you for watching tonight. Hey, everybody else that's tuning in tonight, let us know where you're watching from. I always like to know, what fan bases are we broadcasting to? What communities are we reaching on the live stream? CUNA is always strong, it seems like. Middleton, South Fremont. I want to know, where are you watching tonight? And so before I get to the best thing that I saw, here's H.A. Havas, Aiden Natal grabbing the gold. That was
I want to talk about that when you're done. It sparked in my mind after you'd said that. I'll talk about that match.
Okay. The best thing that I saw last week was at the Tri-State meet up in Coeur d'Alene. Post Falls taking second overall in the team race, I thought was really outstanding because you had a pretty strong field overall. Of course, Flathead from Kalispell, Montana. We talked about what a juggernaut they are. They won the team title. Post Falls wasn't that far off, though, and I was really encouraged by how the Trojans finished in that team race, and I'm sure we'll break down those results a little bit as well. Bryan Zollinger is usually with us live on the podcast. He couldn't be with us tonight, but he is still, checking in, dropping some comments. Bryan says best thing he saw was Cadence Beck winning the inaugural Andrew Beck Memorial and being named outstanding wrestler. I think that tops it all, doesn't it? I mean, what a way to carry on the legacy of her family name. We talked about this, her father, Andrew Beck, who had passed away earlier this year, really a champion and pioneer of women's wrestling, and pretty awesome that happened in Grangeville this past weekend. So, okay, before we get to Aiden Natal, Clifford is watching on YouTube tonight from Emmett. And their girls have won 2 tournaments in a row. Al, have you had a chance to see much of Emmett this year?
Only the boys. I haven't seen much of the girls. I saw them at the Donley duels, and they're not a bad team. They're young. They got some good wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, over there in girls wrestling, I know Columbia's got some pretty talented individuals, right? Caldwell always seems to be really strong as well in that conference. Who else is watching tonight? Jeffrey Clark, Mac Mauger, biggest fan from Blackfoot. We got a Blackfoot Bronco in the house. Max is watching from Nampa tonight, but he's a Caldwell high grad. He's bleeding blue and gold. Let's go, Cougs. And we talked about it. Caldwell, always a strong team traditionally, really now in both boys and girls. So keep the shout outs rolling in. Let us know where you're watching tonight. If you got a favorite wrestler you want to give a shout out to, we'll throw your comments up throughout the night. But let's talk about Aiden Natal from Bora, Al.
At the Reno, one of the best matches I saw was Aiden Natal was seated number 1 at Reno. Shiloh Jones from Mountain View was seated number 2. Throughout the tournament, Aiden had 5 pins in a row to make the finals, whereas Shiloh had, I believe he had 4 pins and 1 decision. But the final was a pretty good final. Shiloh was just battling hard. So that's sort of a preview of what we're going to see the rest of the year with those 2 wrestlers. It was one of the better matches in the finals. Shiloh was, I can tell he's hungry, and Aiden was just dominating the competition. So for heavyweights, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, he's watching his development and trajectory has been really fun to watch throughout his high school career as we're coming down on the back 9 of that. HA is watching tonight from Lewiston up north, and Tiffany and Brian are watching from Meridian. Let's go Warriors. Jacob, we talked about this a little bit before we went live tonight. Meridian handled themselves pretty well this past weekend.
I mean, they had 2 guys make the finals in Hudson and Twait. They both make finals, wrestle competitively. Mara is so talented. And then Cade White. I mean, all of them. All the way, they could probably win 7 state championships as a team right now. And it obviously some luck, or not luck, but they got to wrestle in February. But they could 6 or 7 state championships, or state titles as individuals is pretty good.
Basically, you're saying to everybody else in 5A, good luck is what you're saying there when we.
Yeah, but I do say that. But then we got to go back to Tri-State, like you said, in Post Falls. Post Falls had, kids that their backup 45-pounder almost makes the finals. He ends up finishing top 6, freshman. Like just a backup at a tough weight, and finds his way to a place in a big tournament. So it's going to be interesting. Meridian has the guns and all that. We'll see who has the depth. That could be a big thing for 5A.
Yeah, the depth is going to be a big key for sure. Post Falls did have 3 individual champs at Tri-State. Ryder Seguin at 98, Gentry Smith 195, Trevor Miller at 220. I know Trevor Miller from football season. That dude was a menace at defensive end. He's actually going to go play football for the Idaho Vandals next year. So he's a dude. He can get after it for sure. Matt Biggs is watching from CUNA tonight. Go Cavemen. I know we've got a CUNA basketball game that's streaming live on IdahoSports.com right now as well. So Matt, I appreciate you hanging out with the real outstanding commentators here. None of that basketball stuff. It's all wrestling here on the Matt Chat Prepcast. Okay, so we're talking about the Reno Tournament of Champions a little bit, and this brings us to a larger point I wanted to talk about on the show tonight. We brought back for the first time in several years this year the individual rankings for wrestlers across the state of Idaho by classification and by weight class. And I love the feedback we're getting from the fans. It does take a village, right? All of us are contributing to the rankings, but at the same time, it takes a village. Without input from the fans, it makes our jobs, it makes it a little easier. A couple of things though that I've noticed, a couple of common themes. One is, how come you ranked this kid in this weight class? They've been wrestling at this weight class. And that's tricky, right, Jacob? Because sometimes a kid will wrestle at 126 one week, and then he might be at, the next weight class the next week.
And it's all, kind of descent plan. It's in December, and kids are trying to get in shape and, lean out. So you never really know. Or, they might have wrestled their duel on a Wednesday at 138, but the tournament they're wrestling 132. It's just for the team, or there's so much to it that it's hard. You start going through all the results, and even take the kids that have been traveling and wrestling some of the big tournaments like Meridian. Hudson's wrestling 165, I think it is, and we don't even have that weight class. So by default, he's a 170 in Idaho, but and all those kids, Cade White, Mara, Twait, all those upper weights are so weird because Idaho has different weights than pretty much every state as a whole. So, things are all over the board. And so, come Raleigh, it's going to be, a lot closer to what weight they're actually going.
Yeah, a little more locked in, a little more tight for sure. And that brings me to my second point, Al, and I want to go to you on this, is that the other thing we've gotten from a lot of fans is, how come this kid is ranked ahead of this kid? This kid's already lost, twice this year, and this kid hasn't. But the level of competition is something we factor in as well. We're not just a computer where we go, okay, well, you're 4-0 and you're 2-2. There has to be context. And so, somebody who goes down to Reno, or like last week, right, Ironman, and stumbles a little, maybe the overall record doesn't look great, but we know the context of they really went and competed really hard. And so there is a little bit of subjectivity to the rankings as well, right, Al?
So just think of it as stocks. I mean, if you're placed in a local tournament and you're undefeated and you're not wrestling anyone really highly ranked compared to wrestling at the Reno TOC, which is a higher stock of competition, taking fifth there may be a higher sort of a gauge to where the kid is compared to someone that's going undefeated in the area with less competition. So you look at all those different factors. Usually when someone's undefeated throughout the whole year, to me, that means they probably haven't gone anywhere where they're going to be tested. If they go to those places and are tested, like the Reno and the Walsh Ironman, and undefeated, then they're definitely going to be ranked in the top 3 in the country. So that's usually the gauge, because every one of our state champions this past weekend lost at Reno against someone. So except for Aiden Natal, he's the one that went undefeated in the tournament.
Right. So you just kind of 2 criteria points as we're doing the rankings. And like Jacob said, by the time we get to Raleigh Lane and into January a little more, we'll have it a little more buttoned up because guys will actually start, staying in their respective. There won't be that fluctuation for sure.
More head to head.
Yes. Yeah. There'll be more data, as Al likes to say. There'll be more data we can use. Yanita is watching tonight. She says, you got us watching tonight, Jimenez. I don't know. I'm not good with just the last names. So, you know who this is, Jacob?
Yeah, her it's Marissa Jimenez. She
Gotcha.
State champ for, girls, Raleigh champ, etc. Yeah. Placed at Fargo, all that good stuff. So
I think she's at Oklahoma City College.
Yes,
awesome.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm still learning, guys. I'm sorry, guys and gals. I'm doing my best. And here's a good point from Amy. She says Raleigh gives such a big allowance. Almost everyone wrestles down a weight there. Is that typically what you found, Jacob?
Yeah, they wrestle down, but they still certified for it. Like, just because they get such a big allowance, you're still, by rule, technically not allowed to wrestle, 120 if you didn't certify for it. If you did not certify 120, you can't wrestle 120 at Raleigh, even if it's +4 usually. So most of those guys did certify for it and come, there's going to be a few that are out of that. But for the most part, most kids, what they go at Raleigh is going to be probably what they wind up at the state tournament at.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I believe this year state will be 3 days.
Yep.
So being 3 days, if a wrestler has to weigh in 3 times, that's really going to impact the decision of what weight people are going to go as well. It's different than making it 2 days or 1 day. So that could have an impact on some decisions. We'll see.
Yeah, could you explain that a little more in depth, Al? The difference from because Idaho used to be 3, and then they went to 2, and now they're going back to 3. What are the dynamics involved there?
It's not just a wrestling match. It's the preparation, training to make weight, to how you eat throughout the tournament and get through round 1, 2, make weight again for the next night. It's a 4-day affair. And so even though they're giving you extra weight, it's just maintaining the mental and the physical strength to withstand all that weight cutting for 3 days. Even though they're giving you allowance, it's still a grind. So some people, it's a little bit more difficult to make it 3 days in a row. Even though with the weight allowance, it's still pretty intense. A lot of work. And it can impact your mental part of how you're going to wrestle the next day, depending on how much weight you have to lose. So it takes a lot of discipline, a lot of good nutrition and training and planning ahead. And we don't go to any tournaments throughout the whole year that are 3-day weigh-ins, only 2. So it's going to be a unique dynamic for some people to do.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys a question, because I'm kind of an admitted novice when it comes to this, but I've heard these old wives' tales about cutting weight. I got to make weight. I'm going to wear a, plastic trash bag and so I could sweat it out and lose that. Does that really happen? Or is it more like you said, Al, more just like nutrition, water type stuff?
It's radically changed in the last 20 years. 20 years ago or beyond, it was a lot more intense. They didn't have the testing they have now. A lot of times kids have to go through the weight certification, and basically tells them based on their body weight index, their body fat index, all that stuff will determine what weight they can actually go. Back in the days, like in the 80s, they didn't have all that. So there was a lot of hard weight cutting. I don't want to go into depth of what people do, but I can tell you, I remember the days of getting up early in the morning before school, running 2 or 3 miles, going to class, at lunch running and cutting, then do another 2 or 3 hour practice, and then coming home doing homework and then running again just to keep that weight down. So yeah, that's the hardships of wrestling. Is it that intense today? I don't know. I'm not doing it, so I can't speak for that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
it's still tough, but it's a lot of work. It's not like football where you can come home from practice and eat and not have to worry about it. Wrestling, it's a really disciplined 24-hour a day, 7-day a week type sport.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when you're at the elite levels. So good nutrition, planning, training and how much water intake you take is really important.
Yeah, you've got to get real specific, right, Jacob? You got to drill down to the smallest details.
And I think now, I mean, with all the science behind it, before it was if I go down a weight, I'll do better. Now it's if I just get better at wrestling, I'll do better. Like that's a big part of it. Like, yeah, weight management, being at a healthy weight and doing all those things is super important. But all the hours that were spent on a treadmill or not saying nobody, not saying there's not time on a treadmill and stuff, but compared now, there's more time wrestling than there is cutting weight. Before it was I cut weight, then I wrestle, or I cut weight while I wrestle. Now it's I wrestle, do the right nutrition, and then sweat out a few pounds if I need to. It's completely different with, I mean, the hydration test, the certification, all that stuff makes it not as extreme. It's still not fun, but it's not the, war stories that it used to be.
I'd say it was worse back in the 80s and 70s and early 90s. I'm not an advocate of hardcore weight cutting. You should train to wrestle and don't become the sport of weight cutting. Be the sport of wrestling. Be where you're going to be comfortable and effective.
Yes.
My opinion.
Yes, I agree with everything you guys just said. And I think we're in a better place now. Like most things, we're in a better place than we were, 20 years ago, back in the 80s for sure. I like the point Jacob made as well about, it used to be you go to a lower weight class, you're going to have an easier time. Now it's like, hey, let me be the best I can be at this weight class where I'm comfortable and do it that way. I love the competition. Here's a good comment from and Troy Hobbs says, agreed. Yep. I spot on. Speaking of that competition, we were talking about the rankings a little earlier and how kind of subjective it is in the early going. I like this comment from Alfonso. Parents, don't take it personally. If your kid drops in the rankings, so what? Getting worked up is bad for your health. That's right. I like that, Alfonso. You could be a good life coach, Alfonso. You got to figure it out, my man. So yeah, I want to know from anybody in the chat, anybody in the comments. You guys both were in Reno last week. You got a pretty good handle on that. I was following Tri-State pretty closely. Was anybody at Wyatt Dobbs in Twin? I want to know from the comments. That's the one I was still kind of struggling to kind of wrap my head around and who did what and who performed well. What did you guys hear from Wyatt Dobbs first? And then we'll see if anybody in the chat can enlighten us a little bit.
I think that Buell had a good tournament. Sean Hall and Coy Orr, their semifinals probably should have been the final. That the freshman from Canyon Ridge, that kid's pretty good, but Coy got it done, take care of business, and then both the Brunson boys again. They just keep winning all the time. It's impressive at this rate. I'm pretty sure Bowen pinned his way through the tournament. If I'm pretty sure pinned way through the tournament. If he didn't, somebody will let me know. I'm sure. Pretty sure he pinned his way through. And then what is it? The older Brunson Riley. I still don't know what weight he's going. Like 1 week it's 38, 1 week it's 45. And he won it, but he actually had a good match in the finals. I do know that. He wrestled a kid from Mountain View in the finals.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a comment here in the chat from Skylar Beck. She was at the Beck Memorial for her dad. Yes, Skylar is the sister of Cadence Beck. And yes, it's great to see all the support and the outpouring that came through for that inaugural tournament up there in Grangeville. Amy's a big Buell fan. She says, yes, Bowen pinned everyone. Pretty impressive stuff, right, Jacob?
I mean, pretty much he puts everybody away at this point. I figured I thought he pinned everybody, but didn't want to get that one wrong.
Right, for sure. Where was everybody else at last weekend? Were you in Reno? Were you at Wyatt Dobbs? Were you, we had the Ryrie Rumble in East Idaho, bunch of duels going on up there. I was kind of following that from a distance a little bit as well. Let us know in the chat, where were you at last week? What did you see? Who stood out to you? Because, as talented as we all are, I say that, a little tongue in cheek. We do try to get to as much stuff as we can and see as much stuff as we can, but I mean, in a state like Idaho, it's impossible to be everywhere at one time, right? That's why I love this. That's why I wanted to do this podcast every week, is because really the wrestling community, it's like one large extended family. It was, it's pretty cool how everybody can come together. Troy Hobbs was at the Bonneville duels. That was the High Country Conference duels, right, Jacob?
Yep, High Country Conference duels. Pretty sure South went undefeated. Other than that, results for that were kind of hard to, pinpoint. You had to go through every team individually to kind of find out what was going on. There's a couple good matches, though, for sure.
Definitely. Skylar wants us to talk a little bit about a pair of Clearwater Valley Rams, Jake Fabi and then Anthony Fabi. I think, are they brothers or cousins? I can't remember. I did one of their football games this year. They both play football for Clearwater Valley up there in Kuski. But they're both phenomenal wrestlers as well, Jacob.
No, they definitely are. I mean, they had a good tournament. I know that they're doing well in 2A. It's one of those things. I think they got them ranked third now. Clearwater. They're gonna make noise. As things go, and it'd be interesting to see. Hopefully, they go to Raleigh, and we could really see them wrestle. That's the goal.
For sure. Yeah. Skylar says they're brothers. That makes sense. I have a quick story about Anthony Fabi, kind of a funny one from the beginning of football season. So Anthony was a 2-year starter at quarterback for the Clearwater Valley football team his junior and senior year. This year, when I got the roster at the start of the year, I saw a kid named Louis Fabi on the roster. And I was like, oh, I guess Anthony must have graduated and this Louis kid is the next one in line. Well, I find out after like 2 weeks from a Clearwater Valley fan, they're like, no, it's the same kid. His nickname is Louis. And I was like, well, what? Why is this nickname Louis? And they're like, I don't know. They just called him Louis since elementary school. So I have no idea why, but Anthony Louis Fabi, kind of an interesting deal there. Here's a shout out for Al. Dusty Vaughn says, what's up, Big Al?
Hey, Dusty. How you doing, brother?
Al, have you been able to see many of those North teams in person? We're talking about Clearwater Valley and up north. I know Potlatch also is always a very strong program.
Yeah, like I said, I'm new to this state. My learning curve, I am on a steep learning curve. The only time I've seen them is at the state tournaments. So give me a few more years and I'll be able to have some of this down pat in my mind. I'm still learning the state and what's going on.
It's
But it's difficult until we go to Raleigh Lane because, the north doesn't normally come down, nor do we go up south as much because it's the winter time. It's hard to travel during that time. But I'll likely see most of those teams at Raleigh. At least where the teams we go, our tournaments we go to.
For sure. Dusty says, I'm good, my man. So there you go. That's good. And then Skylar says, she's laughing at that story I told about it. Anthony Fabi being called Louis. She says, we love Louis. So yeah. You know what? So do we. Okay. Oh, go ahead, Jacob.
Oh, I was going to say the other up north team, Kellogg.
Yes.
Dropped down to 2A, they won a couple big duels. They do have a lot of talent and they're coached well. And, not saying that anybody's going to knock off New Plymouth or Ryrie. It's still a 2-horse race, but Clearwater and Kellogg and all those schools are starting to make things more interesting.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. I actually got an email as we were doing the show from a St. Mary's fan of all people. We all know St. Mary's and Kellogg don't necessarily like each other. They're big rivals in most sports. So a St. Mary's fan, he sent me an email and he said Kellogg is way underranked. They will upset the apple cart at 2A. They've got depth and hammers. And you seem to agree with that, Jacob.
Yeah, they do. They wrestle well. I mean, they wrestled well at 3A level. I mean, they had a lot of guys place, a year ago. So now down at 2A, they have the potential and the ability to really be a force, which, I don't know if anybody beats Ryder and New Plymouth yet, but if anybody does, Kellogg's not far away.
Yeah, making that move down from 3A to 2A is really going to help them out for sure. Okay, a couple of comments here. Skylar Beck one more time. She says, I want to thank you guys for talking so highly of my dad. It really makes me happy. tears in my eyes hearing all the great stuff about him. Yeah, I mean, and we're just echoing the sentiments of everybody in this Idaho wrestling community. You know, what we're saying is not any different from what anybody from border to border is saying. So we're happy to, speak so highly of your dad. And I'm so glad that legacy will continue on with this memorial tournament every year for sure. HA says he was watching the Lewiston Bengals at Tri-State last week. Big Rob, that's Robert Storm, made the finals but lost in OT. Joelle got back on the podium, and Hoyt placed third. There were 3 Tri-State champs in that bracket. He said Washington, Oregon, and Idaho State champs all in that bracket. Yeah, I'm a big Robert Storm fan. I got to see him during football season, guys. He's a defensive tackle, and he wore the jersey number 0. So we kind of dubbed him Agent Zero. He was a fun guy to watch. What do you think about Lewiston? We talk about Post Falls as a team from the north that could come down and maybe challenge. Where do you see, Al? Where do you see Lewiston fitting in that 5A picture?
They had some good wrestlers last year. Are you talking boys or girls?
Boys. Let's talk boys first and then girls, because I think their girls program is very strong.
So, Jacob, who's the guy at Lewiston? Is it Hoyt He's a tough kid. Yeah, he's a tough kid. He's wrestled overseas. I think he was, other than wrestling Fargo and some of those tournaments, he's wrestled overseas in Estonia. I guess they won some tournaments there in place. I mean, I watched him at state last year. He's pretty tough. He's the only one I really know from there. And then the girls, you got the girl Slider, I think it's her last name, placed at the Fargo twice. So they got some good kids up there.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see those Lewiston wrestlers. We talked about they were supposed to come down to Boise, the Boise area for the season opener, weren't able to because of bad weather conditions. Mm-hmm. Amy wants to know how many teams will be at Raleigh Lane. Brian kind of answered it for us in the chat. Should be 80 plus teams. This is, guys, we get done with the holidays, we come into the new year, and it's kind of like, it's not the Super Bowl, right? That's state is the Super Bowl, but this is probably the biggest regular season meet in Idaho, the most buzz, certainly, right, Al?
Yeah, Todd does a good job. They run a real well tournaments, ran very well. Competition's always good. It's a good snapshot to let your kids know exactly where they stand for state. A little bit closer. You're going to, because of the pressure situations, it's not just a couple easy matches and a tough one in the final. It starts to get tough right there at the second and third round quarters. So it's a great tournament. I enjoy it. I look forward to it again.
Yeah. You want to know how big the Raleigh Lane is? It's the 22nd annual coming up in a couple of weeks. Both divisions will have a 64-man bracket.
Wow.
I think you could say the girls might be hard. The girls bracket Raleigh is harder than the state tournament, just because of out-of-state influence, and there is qualification for girls state. Like there is a district since broke up. This one, it's bring them all, gunslinging. And, it's hard. It's some. You can get hot in a 16-man bracket, do some damage. 64-man bracket is a little bit tougher to be hot for 2 full days.
I love it. I love the 64-man bracket. That's awesome.
So talking about that, the Reno TOC and the girls, it's growing just like it's growing here in the state. I think there was so many girls where, to the point on the second day, if you lost, they could not wrestle for a third and fourth because they'd have that 5th match in the day. So something's going to have to change in Reno because they didn't wrestle for third or wrestle for 5th or anything like that, because they would have been over the match count, which is you're only allowed 5 matches in a day. And they had 15 mats running. Well, actually 14 out of 15 were running. So I don't know. I'm sure Raleigh will be able, I think they got to set up the way the bracket is where they can do both days and still be okay.
Oh yeah, it's a well-oiled machine at this point. They know what they're doing for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Colton Ray Walker. Hi, Jacob. Just here for my shout out.
That's my brother-in-law. So, he wanted to get his airtime. He probably wants to comment up one more time so he could. And he could tell me at dinner, hey, I was tuned in, I watched. So
Oh, that's funny. That's super funny. Okay, I did want to get to one last question. This came very early before we even did the show. I just posted the little reminder that, hey, we're going to be broadcasting Wednesday night, and Matthew Hamilton had a question right away on that post. This was like 2 days ago, so I wanted to get to this. He said, I hope y'all talk about some of the freshmen at Tri-State, 145-pound division, perhaps.
I'm Post Falls backup 145.
Yeah,
I was locked in on that one. And
so remind us. You talked about this at the top a little bit, Jacob, but kind of refresh us on what happened there at Tri-State. Kind of a pleasant surprise, right?
I mean, anytime you have a freshman come in the middle weights and place at a big tournament, that's a good thing. That goes back to Coach Reardon is a magician, or there's something in the water, or who knows what it is. But a freshman slides in, he's not the starter, places at Tri-State. I mean, he's gonna state tournament's gonna be, that's big points. They're gonna score a lot. So, and then shout out to Matthew Hamilton, Damien's little brother. That guy's always running around a tournament getting a new singlet, so I know them well.
Yeah. And yes, Damien had a great Tri-State meet there as well. Okay, Colton says one more thing here. Hey, Eck, just here for my shout out because we know I'm the better trainer / coach. Haha. All right. Hey, sounds like you guys got some scores to settle over Christmas dinner.
He's gonna win at this rate. He's kicking my butt, so I mean, might throw in the towel eventually.
Yeah, no, that's funny for sure. Well, we'll kind of put the finishing touches on this week's edition of the Matt Chat Prepcast. Big thanks to everybody that joined us live tonight and jumped in the comments. Really, this is a show that we want to be driven by you, the fans. We'll come in with what we want to talk about each week, but we also want you guys and gals to kind of steer the conversation to wherever you want it to go. It's your show. It's not our show. It's your show. So we want you to have that voice and feel like you're being heard. So again, big thanks to everybody in the comments that came on and talked tonight. And that's what it is. Just kind of a conversation about the great sport of wrestling here in the state of Idaho. One more time, I'm going to ask before we duck out, if you're sitting there watching on Facebook, please hit that like button. And when we're done, share it, because I know there's going to be people that are going to come back tomorrow, Friday, maybe at Christmas dinner, discussions are getting heated at the table with the in-laws. They want to duck away and maybe just take their mind off things for a second. And especially with not having a show next week, I think a lot of people are going to want to come back and revisit it. So if you share it, that will help more eyeballs see it. But again, just hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds. That'll help us in the Facebook algorithm. It'll help more people see it in subsequent days. And if you're watching on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, just hit that subscribe button, that little bell button. We're trying to increase our number of subscribers there. Again, it takes 2 seconds, doesn't cost you anything, and we appreciate all of the great work that you, our wrestling community, are doing to make Idaho wrestling really climb up the charts. Alfonso says, "Good job, guys. Lots of fun." HA says, "Thanks for the podcast. Fun tonight, fellas. Gotta love it." Yeah. Hey, we're slowly growing this thing. We want to bring this to you, the wrestling fans, each and every week. Merry Christmas to both of you. Al, what are your holiday plans?
I'm gonna stay local at home. I got some family and friends here, so we're just gonna enjoy the time off here.
Cool. Jacob, what do you got going on?
Going to Driggs and then up Island Park after that. So.
Oh, Island Park! I'm jealous. There's some good scenery up there this time of year, for sure. Yeah, I'm headed back to my home state of Montana. That's where my parents live. And then I'll actually be over in Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls area the week after Christmas as well. So I'll be up north taking in some of the action there. So everybody that's watching tonight, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We're taking next week off, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for our 2023 launch. Of course, we're going to be talking about Raleigh Lane. I feel like that's going to be a big dominator of our conversations next in 2 weeks. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, to the Matt Chat Prepcast. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.